No, that prevents you from speaking moistly. Speaking moistly. Keep 2 meters apart. Speaking moistly. Speaking.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Speaking Moistly. This is the inaugural show. This is the first show, and I want to introduce my friend Greg. He is helping me out and co-hosting today. So, hi, Greg. Welcome.
Thank you, Mark.
All right.
Great to be here.
And our Prime Minister sang us in, and I think this is going to be my intro for this entire program. But what is the format? Usually I go through the news all by myself, and I thought, man, I want to have people having a conversation. I want to hear a discussion about this because we've seen some crazy things happening in Canada over the last 6 months, over the last 4 years, since 2010. It's been kind of wild. But more recently, things like this have been happening, and I've already shared these tabs with Greg, so he's kind of aware of what I'm going to talk about. But to bring everybody up to speed, here's a Oakville Global News reporting coronavirus. Oakville, Ontario family hit with $880 ticket after going rollerblading. I talked about this on Canada Poly, but I want to show you guys. It was lagging there, but I want to show you guys what the officer said and what the interaction was, and then we're going to chat about it. So. An Oakville, Ontario family is speaking out after a rollerblading outing turned into a costly ticket for allegedly violating COVID-19 physical distancing rules. On Friday, Todd Nelson took his sons Liam, Brandon, and Dustin to the parking lot of a Glen Abbey Community Center to go rollerblading, he said, but after 45 minutes, a bylaw officer pulled up and told them they had to go. I just said, "Who are we hurting?" he said. "Oh, you're not going to be like that, are you?" And I said, "I'm just asking a question," Nelson said. And that was it. He said, "Give me your ID." And the next thing you know, we got a ticket. The ticket added up to $880 after surcharges. The alleged offense, violating the emergency order issued by the Ontario government that closed outdoor recreation areas to curb the spread of COVID-19. So, Greg, I have a very strong opinion on most things I bring up on my show, but what's your feeling on our overreach the overreach of our municipal officers?
I mean, wow, a family rollerblading and getting fined for it. That's really disturbing. That's really disturbing. And if further down in the article, sure enough, it says we were basically alone in the parking lot.
Yep.
And it's really strange because Canadians, and this might be happening outside of Canada too, but we're getting so many different messages from officials where it's, stay home or stay 2 meters apart, but you can stay close together if you're in the same family. Yep. So if as a citizen, it's really disturbing because we're kind of, we could be victims to $880 fines for going out to rollerblade.
Right.
This is the new reality we live in.
Yeah. I mean, my kids, I took them over to there's an empty parking lot over by where I live, and we were going around and around, and there's a little bit of a hill, and my kids are young, so I thought, this is great. There's nobody going to be coming in and out of there. And we didn't get a fine or anything to that effect. But the same question applies. Who are we hurting? And sure enough, later on in the article, it says in terms of the spirit of social distancing, it was just our immediate family. And I can't help but feel that there's certainly a danger of just everyday outings turning into worry fests that you might contravene these, constantly changing expectations for Ontarians and for Canadians. It's really jarring.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like because it says here the emergency order issued by the Ontario government that closed outdoor recreation areas. So this is about outdoor recreation areas. Yeah, I've heard the 2 meters apart thing. This is a detail I haven't heard about. And by the sounds of it, unless these rollerbladers were hopping fences or getting wire cutters, jumping through fences to find some recreation area, they made it sound like a parking lot.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder if they had been in a parking lot, they've gotten the same fine, or would they've got a warning? Because specifically they were contravening. And so I have kids, so the park right by me has security tape up all around it. So, and kids are messy and they've got snotty noses and they touch everything. And yeah, okay, I can understand. There's certainly a reason to close the kids' playgrounds and stuff. But it is wild when you've got a big flat field and people wanting that closed, right? And the trails are open, thankfully. But yeah, there's if they were just batting the ball around or throwing the ball around in an empty parking lot, I wonder if they would have got the fine because they wouldn't have been violating that specific thing, right? And in this case, you're bringing it up. But yeah, Doug Ford, shut her down, man. Shut it down.
The silly thing that actually came to mind right away for me is, so didn't the officer have to get close to give them this ticket?
I would imagine.
Did he have a 2-meter long like stick to be able to hand him the ticket? Did that violate the social distancing? And I know that maybe this is a silly technicality, but at the same time, we're getting fined for rollerblading in parking lots. So I feel like if we're gonna have like principled rules here, then how did that even happen? How did he even get handed the ticket?
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly, and I mean, there's pitfalls with from beginning to end with that interaction as well, right? Like, and even empowering the municipal people to be handing out tickets in that way, like the municipal bylaw officers. Yeah, they can give tickets for parking overnight and stuff, but it's a different thing altogether. And I mean, I've worked with people. I've worked in closed custody facilities. I've worked in stuff like that. It's a different thing to tell somebody, "Here's your fine." Like that's. Yeah. It's different. It's really different, right? There's a reason there are police, or there used to be a reason there are police.
I do think it's worth mentioning as well. I imagine it's a lot like speeding tickets and the way in which they are enforced, which Canadians can relate, like not consistently. Sometimes if you're in the city, they'll be less enforced, but like when you're on the highways, like that's where they're like really looking for speeders, right?
Yep.
And I think that'll apply for this as well. It depends on the neighborhood. It depends on a lot of different things. Because I mean, I'll tell you, I live in Etobicoke, and I've seen cops hanging out outside getting a shawarma.
Yeah.
There wasn't really any social distancing going on. I don't know. So it's sounds like there's like selective enforcements of these different kinds of rules.
And it's hard to. How would you standardize that, right? Like, how would you you get these rollerbladers, but not those rollerbladers? How would you do that across jurisdictions? It's hard to instruct the police with very clear laws, right? And even when we've got very clear laws, like please don't put flaming pieces of wood in front of trains. Apparently, that's hard. That's difficult to enforce, right? Like, can't even do that. God. But if you're rollerblading, buddy, you better watch out. The municipal bylaw officer is going to get you. And that's just crazy, right? I'm going to... Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say the effect it has, too, is really unfortunate because it just sends a lot of fear and uncertainty to a family that wants to go out on a nice sunny day, despite the crisis going on. There's that extra added fear of like, oh no, I don't want to get fined.
Yeah.
Like, should we go outside? And now there's even more kind of apprehension for doing like pretty mundane stuff. Yeah. I mean, I think you should be able to go outside with your family and enjoy the fresh air and just like, not get close to other people. That seems simple enough, but apparently not.
Humans need a walk. Like you need to go for, I have a walk. Yeah. I have what I call the 3:00 walk, my 3:00 walk. And the kids used to make fun of me, and now they're home from school. So they are also subject to the 3:00 walk. So the other day when it was blowing, like it was very not nice at 3:00, and I was like, so it's time for the walk. The kids are like, no, doesn't matter. But you have to get out and walk yourself. So we were taking our kids to a local trail, and there's all the cars lined up and stuff. And again, no bylaw, but stuff like that, it does make you think twice. It chills the whole thing. And maybe that's the point. I think that there are people, I've spoken to people who would tell me that that's the whole point. That's the reason they did this, to make you think twice, because this is serious, right? So is the economy being shut down. That's pretty serious. Very serious. Yeah. And we're not getting, I've spoken a lot on Canada Poly about how there are other economies that have been continually open through this whole thing. They used masks, they've used all sorts of other interventions, but they found a way, and we also need to find a way. Because if this thing doesn't go away, we have to live with it. Like restrictions on rollerblading is not gonna work next year. You know what I mean? Like because of the crisis, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna hold water, in my opinion.
No. I've also heard from. I haven't done a whole lot of research on this, but I've heard that people who study respiratory viruses are saying, going outside is going to be really good to actually prevent COVID-19 as opposed to everyone staying inside all cooped up. Like that's
Yep.
where respiratory illness can actually thrive more. So
Yeah.
that's an angle that's not really talked about much, but
Yeah.
I think it's worth mentioning.
Yeah. Yeah. So get outside, give yourself a walk. Make sure it's important. Walking yourself is at least as important as walking your dog. Okay, I'm going to move into this one. There's at least one company, and possibly more than one, that's using this as a way to harvest people's information. So that I just want to tell, like, be aware of what you're signing up for, right? Like, there are so many things like that. Where they're like, oh, are you mad about this thing? Sign up for this petition. And then all of a sudden you're on 3 mailing lists. And you're like, what the I was just mad too. So that's just a little aside I wanted to toss in. Here is Senator, I believe this is Senator Leo Housakis. I talked about this earlier, but as we're criminalizing the rollerbladers, this is also happening. Senator Housakis is tweeting, how is prison not the safest place to be? Our seniors aren't being moved out of long-term care facilities for their safety, but we're being told to stay inside our homes. Wouldn't releasing prisoners go against that reasoning? This is beyond the pale. Our government is doing whatever it wants to do. And this is in response to a tweet of hundreds of federal prisoners paroled as pandemic relief measures, says Minister Bill Blair. And so what do you think about that, Greg? I've spoken about this, so my opinion is clear, but I'm going to talk about mine. But what do you think?
Sure. So I actually have an interesting perspective on this because last week I did an interview with Mark Emery. For those who don't know, he's the Prince of Pot. He's been in and out of like 39, 40 different jails and institutions. And
I met Mark really briefly last year, and he was a super nice guy, by the way. I just wanted to get that.
He's a great guy.
Yeah,
but, and he knows like the institution and jail system very well. And he said, sure enough, it is a health issue. Like, there has been, I think, around 50 or maybe 56 different inmates have died of COVID-19. There's been also some employees that have died.
Yep.
So the health issue is legitimate. But I think you're right when you compare it to long-term care facilities and that sort of thing. It's like where are our priorities at this point? Because there's it's law-abiding citizens getting ticketed for rollerblading, and then it's like, okay, let's allow some of these inmates out because of a health issue. It definitely does seem very very backwards.
Yeah, it seems a little arbitrary. And the funny thing to me is, okay, if you think about it, and I understand there are potential health issues for being in a prison because, there's central food. It's the same health issues as, and I made this point on my show as well, and I don't mean to keep throwing back to my show, but whatever. That it's the same problem, whether you're in a long-term care facility or in a prison or in hotels where they're essentially making the same food in the same place and you have to go to the same place to pick it up. Like, these are all the same problems, right? It's the same problem as we all have to go grocery shopping at the same store, right? So if one person has it potentially at the store, you're going to potentially spread it. These are, I mean, the risk of living, right? Like, we live in a world that is dangerous, and that's unfortunate. But the thing that we're not doing is we're not moving people out of long-term care facilities. We're not lifting heaven and earth to make sure our elderly are moved back with their families to reduce their risk and to retrofit houses to maintain them. So why are we releasing prisoners early to families that could potentially not handle the care and attention that they potentially require, right? From addictions to all that other stuff. Why does one make sense and the other one doesn't make sense? And to me, I'm just like, it defies reason.
And in another way, why are we respecting, potentially, violent criminals? Why are we respecting inmates more than we're respecting our elderly?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It's hard to justify. It's hard to justify the one and not the other, and then one instead of the other, and nobody. It's like the obvious double standards that are endemic in our culture, I guess.
Yeah. I do want to bring up, while we're on it, the other perspective I heard from Mark that I thought was very interesting, which was if he were on the inside and was offered to go out because of COVID-19, he would say, I'm not sure if I would even want to do that. Because, maybe if I was let off 5 years early to go out, I would probably do it. But if it was only 6 months, then why would I really, usually when you go out, you have to go get a job and you have to kind of try to get back up on your feet. And right now, it's not really a good time in the job market. Where are you going to live? We are in this lockdown crisis, and, it's not really the best time to go out back into the real world, especially when you're on the inside. You have 3 meals, you have a place to stay, you have all those things.
It's predictable. And care if you've got other illnesses, all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I talked about this on my show, and federally they're talking about releasing people, but provincially they have released people, 1,900 people, and this was as of April 4th. And 1,900 people who don't necessarily have places to go. Now, some of them do have places to go, but I did on my show. I did a talk on it about specifically an article talking about a guy named John who didn't have anywhere to go. And it's the question of like, are we doing the right thing? Even though like that's the motivation. I don't think people are trying to mess with anybody. I don't think anybody's trying to do a bad job except for possibly Miss Tam and maybe Miss Haydu. I'm not sure.
I think it's also, I've never heard this angle brought up before, but why is it that we're just hearing, we're going to let inmates out? And it's like, couldn't there be other steps taken on the inside of the institution to try and like be more proactive about COVID-19?
Yes. Yeah.
Because before talking to Mark about this, I thought I was right on the same page of being like, why these people are already on lockdown.
Yep.
These people are already, inside, but
and if they wanted to release them, could they say like, listen, we will release you on paper and you can stay in the prison, and here's your sanitary cell, and here's your our meals are going to be done in this way to lower the infection risk, and you'll be tested and blah blah blah. Like I think that there's either missed opportunity or they don't want to take it. They're purposely saying no, this is just like the only way to fight this is the lockdown. The only thing we could possibly do is the lockdown. It's just it's so strange.
And when it comes to a highly controlled environment, I would hope that a federal institution or a jail would be one of them, where you could try to control the sanitary measures and the distancing and all that sort of stuff.
It's a jail. Like, get some duct tape and put X's on the floor and be like, Mr. Convict or Madam Convict, please stand on the X. And if you can't do that, please go back to your cell. Like, this seems like not all that difficult, but maybe I'm crazy. Maybe you shut down visitation. Maybe, maybe you say you can't have visits right now because of that pesky COVID-19. And if they say, what about my rights? You say, well, yeah, I know, but the whole virus thing. And, what about the people who were violated for this person to spend the time in jail, right? What about that?
I mean, any way you cut it, when you compare it to, regular citizens just kind of rollerblading around and getting fined $800, it's crazy.
Time to go to the gulag, comrade. The last story, I guess, of this morning. You know what? Okay, evacuation center. We're going to come in exactly the amount of time that I thought we were going to come in. So, okay. I think it'll be about 22 minutes. Evacuation center peppered with bullets. Morning of Nova Scotia mass shooting. So, isn't this weird? This is the strangest ending or middle to Canadian mass shooting, a Canadian tragedy that ever, right? Here's the kind of meat of it. In a Facebook post Wednesday morning, the Onslow Belmont Fire Brigade confirmed its building sustained considerable damage as a result of the situation. I should have backed up here. Hold on. Here it is. In a statement to Global News, Nova Scotia Serious Incident Response Team, SIRT, Interim Director Pam Curran said the team is investigating the discharge of firearms by 2 RCMP officers near the Oslo Belmont Fire Hall at about 10:30 a.m. on Sunday morning. At this point, we don't know what they were shooting at, Curran said. We do know that the shooter was not in the area at the time. Okay, so the shooter is... it's a span of 12 hours. It's a long period of time. And these 2 RCMP officers show up at this place and shoot up a place where there are people sheltering for safety. Here it is. The hall was used to provide a place where residents could come take a break, register, and get hotel and Red Cross information, said in the post. So this seems like they should have had that bylaw officer ready to respond, maybe. I don't know. This seems like needed to have a response much, much more than it had. And at the beginning, we've got, people being targeted for rollerblading. It just seems, this slippery slope just seems worse and worse. And what were these RCMP officers shooting at? A full building full of people sheltering in place? It seems weird.
There's way more questions from this article than answers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know is what the one person said, and
Yeah.
2 RCMP officers that were discharging. Have we talked to these RCMP officers? Have we found out who these officers are who
Yeah.
are firing at this building? Do we know the answers to those questions?
Yeah, I mean, a badge number would be helpful, wouldn't it? There would be certainly at least 1 or 2 questions answered, who they were and maybe what the heck they were doing. But it goes to what's happening in our country with regards to the way the press is looking at something and reporting on something, all the way from the positioning of this article, from the looking at it from the rollerblading family to the cops who were shooting the fire hall. Like, I'm left always with more questions than answers, always with more questions. And I don't understand why. Like, these are situations that should have answers, right? Like, these are situations that I shouldn't be confused about. I shouldn't be concerned that it's going to happen here because it's so easy to impersonate a police officer, or it's so easy to have a municipal bylaw officer show up and say, hey man, you're playing far too much with that basketball and those people are too close, right?
And I think one message is, Canadians, be on your toes. Be on your toes if you're out and about just getting some fresh air, and be on your toes when you're reading your news and consuming your news, because this Nova Scotia news kind of just is telling me, unless this is just a really strange coincidence, there's just like a lot of things that we don't really know yet about this shooting event. Because I feel like this is just a total wrench into the story, and we don't really know. Like, how can we know as people who are just kind of getting drips of news here and there? We got to stay on our toes,
Yeah, be discerning in the information you read, and understand that it's only one point of view, right?
Yeah.
So I think we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining me today, Greg. I appreciate it, and maybe we'll have you back next week. Who knows?
Thanks for having me, Mark. Cheers.
Thank you, dear viewer, for watching Speaking Moistly. Oh my goodness, this is the best extra and intro song ever, and it's not loading right now because I was going to just push the Speaking Moistly, but it's not loading. That's annoying. All right, well, thank you for watching. Check out speakingmoistly.co. Oh, there it is. Here we go.
Moistly.
Have a good day, everyone.
Keep 2 meters apart, speaking moistly.